Great. I would, going to the next slide, yes. I would like to present about 6 or 7 ECGs, which will cover the 3 topics of discussion, which would include the utility of implantable loop recorder, atrial arrhythmias, the most common rhythm disorder in clinical practice, and athletes' cardiac conduction system. We'll start with the first case here now. It is about a 59-year-old female with obesity, high blood pressure, ischemic heart disease with a history of myocardial infarction, and an angioplasty with stent, hypothyroidism, chronic back pain on analgesics. She presented with recurrent episodes of pre-syncope, followed by syncope in August 2017. I'm going to next share with you the ECG of the patient at the time of presentation. Now, is there any volunteer from among the participants who would like to talk about the ECG, please? Whosoever would like to may unmute himself or herself and take us through the ECG.
Hamish Pierce here. I think the rate is regular. It's about 100. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's actually not quite regular, is it? No. But you can see on the lead 2, the P wave and the QRS are not related. So there's some conduction abnormality there.
Right, sorry. Well done, Hamish. Thanks for volunteering. You said that P and QRS are not appearing associated in which lead, please?
In lead 2 down the bottom.
Down the bottom, that's right. Since I can only see the screen and move the arrows on the screen both together, I will just let you know. So you clearly can identify this as the QRS complex. Where do you think is the P wave? Is this looking
there,
like?
There.
That's right, right. So this P wave is followed by this QRS.
Yeah.
This P wave is followed by this QRS. This P wave is followed by this QRS.
It's regular. Just
so may I ask, what do you think is the regularity or irregularity due to here, please?
Well, maybe it's sinusoarrhythmia.
Right. So every P wave is followed by a QRS.
Yeah.
Just the P wave and the QRS are separated by a long PR interval.
Yeah.
Right. So it appears that it is a regular rhythm with P followed by QRS and a long conduction time between the P and the QRS. Now, what do you think is the heart rate looking like on this ECG, Hamish?
1, 2, 3. So it's
100.
It's 100, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it is just about 100 beats per minute. As you counted 1, 2, and 3 here, 3 squares, big squares, makes it, and just a little one more little square, maybe around 95 beats per minute. So at 95 beats per minute, this lady has got 1-to-1 conduction between the atrium and the ventricles.
Yep.
Right. Any other conduction problem that you can see, especially say in lead V1?
Right bundle branch block.
Oh, excellent. The QRS appears a little bit wider. So the QRS appears a little bit wider with a terminal R wave, and someone, Dr. Opiami, has pointed out that there is T wave inversion in V2. So that's a very good point. Why do you think would T wave be inverted in V1, V2, V3, but become upright in V4, V5, and V6? Is there any relation with a right bundle branch block, you think, that can cause that? Right. Yeah, I see Dr. Shahita Amir here suggesting that it is due to right bundle branch block. Absolutely right. Let me tell you that we are into the arrhythmia evening, so I am not going to ask you any question which is going to be related to ischemic heart disease. So don't worry for the moment about the T wave inversions. And what you can see here is absolutely right. When the terminal depolarization wave is in positive direction, the T wave will be in the opposite direction. Like say V1, QRS terminal component is in the positive direction, like is upward, the T wave is facing downward. It will change when you come to V6. The right bundle branch block produces terminal S wave, which is therefore having an oppositely directed T wave. So T becomes upright in V6 and T is negative in V1, V2, but upright in the rest of the leads like V5, V6. That is all purely due to repolarization abnormality secondary to depolarization abnormality of right bundle branch block. So this type of T wave inversion is considered as a secondary repolarization problem, not a primary problem as like we see in ischemic heart disease. So very good. So Hamish, I think that we are having first degree heart block as we would otherwise identify this as, or a prolonged PR with a right bundle branch block. So this lady does have some baseline conduction system disease, but the sinus node is running relatively faster at 100 beats per minute at rest without any reason. Is that right?
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So now let us go forward. What will we do next is we will certainly investigate her further. And as a part of the investigations, we did an echocardiogram which showed wall motion abnormality consistent with previous history of ischemic heart disease, and LV function was also down to 47%, which was also in line with the ischemic heart disease. We did Holter test on her and even monitor test, which did not show anything other than sinus rhythm and relatively resting tachycardia. So the patient was at rest running around 100 beats per minute. In addition to that, we also did carotid massage to rule out if there was any provocable bradyarrhythmia, and there was none. So here we are dealing with a situation, if I go back, there is no sinus node dysfunction as you can see, but there is a significant amount of AV node and infranodal conduction problem. Is that right?
Mhm.
Right. Now, this type of patient who had recurrent episodes of pre-syncope and also this time with syncope, we thought that there is mostly going to be an underlying AV nodal conduction problem causing her syncope, and therefore we inserted a loop recorder in her. Now, is everyone familiar with the loop recorder? What is a loop recorder?
Don't know.
Okay, all right. I will show you this image which shows a tiny, as you can see, device which is just a diagnostic tool. It is not a pacemaker. It is not a therapeutic tool. It is a device which has got a memory chip in it, and it can record ECGs in a loop-wise fashion. I am going to show you in my next slides what the loop type of memory is. But this is, practically speaking, 2 dots of the ECG that we insert under the skin like this. As you can see, this is here. This is the precordial area, as you see here. And this loop recorder is just inserted under the skin. Now this loop recorder actually has got 2 ECG dots, like one dot is here and the other dot is here. So it will continuously record ECG of the person. And it has got the battery which can last for up to 3 to sometimes 4 years. And the newer versions will have battery lasting up to 5 years. So if anybody is having problems like syncope, which come infrequently, and they are profound enough that you don't want to leave the patient unmonitored after doing routine tests, which don't show any problem, this is one way to leave them under continuous monitoring state. Now, what does the loop memory mean? Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Great. I will quickly go.
Sorry,
Yeah,
how do
sorry.
how do you download the recording?
Right. Now I will go to the next slide as to just first go through how we record this process, like record the heart rhythm here. The download, I will address to it in a moment, if that is okay, please.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So let us see what is this memory loop means. Like it has got a memory which has a function which follows what is called the loop type of function, which means that if there is any event which the diagnostic device is programmed to record, then it will record and fill one loop with, say, for example, like this, there is one event which has been recorded. Then it finds there is a second event which meets a criteria, like say, for example, that the heart rate drops below 40 beats per minute, then it will automatically record and fill the second loop. Then there is another event which says that there is a heart rate which is above 150 beats per minute. Then it will fill that event into the third loop, and it will record a bipolar ECG between those two ECG dots into this memory box. Later, if it finds the second, another one, then it will fill the another box. That way it will fill all the boxes. And now if there is another event, say event number 7, that event number 7 has to find a space which is no longer existing. So what it will do is it will take the first event out and put the 7th event in. And this is how the memory will keep looping. So there is a finite amount of memory, and as the memory gets completely filled, it gets displaced. The first one gets displaced first to allow the last one to enter in. So this is why it is called a loop recorder. Now, in this patient, what we found was this. As you can see, in August 2017, as we discussed, the patient had syncope. September 2017, the patient got the loop recorder implanted. And on 23rd of March, the patient had a symptom of pre-syncope. So the patient could activate the loop recorder using an activator that is available to communicate with the loop recorder that I would like you to record this event. So that is called symptom activation. And the loop recorder recorded the heart rhythm at that very moment. As you can see, it is labeled as a symptom by the loop recorder here, and it has recorded this heart rate. Now, as you can see here, what we did is this is to answer the question as to how do we download the data. So there are two ways in which we can do that. The patients have got what we call as a home monitor or a remote monitoring device, which is nothing but a mobile phone, which will receive all the data from the loop recorder and transmit it to the central server. And from the central server, the data will then be transmitted to the doctor who is taking care of the patient, which in usually a cardiac electrophysiologist or a cardiologist. And they would be informed about the recordings that have been transmitted, received, and sent to them. So in this case, since the patient activated the device, it was very important for the physician to be informed that the patient has got some symptoms and the rhythm at that time has been like this. So what do you think? Is this the cause of patient's symptom? Like, will it cause patient syncope, presyncope? What do you think is the rhythm showing? All right, I see some answers. SVT from Dr. Shahita Amir here. Right, now if you look here, it is a rate of, what do you think is the rate? The rate is about 150 bits per minute, right?
Yep.
150 bits per minute, but you see that the QRS morphology continues to remain wide, as was noted on the baseline ECG. And we also had noted that this patient has got resting sinus tachycardia, relatively fast sinus rate. I won't say completely tachycardia, but 95 bits per minute or 100 bits per minute at rest is relatively fast rate. So yes, this is most likely tachycardia, which is supraventricular. Supraventricular means not necessarily that it has to involve an AV node, and atrial tachycardia is also a supraventricular tachycardia. So because this was the rhythm recorded, instead of what we expected would be a heart block to explain patient syncope, we recorded this. So we took the patient in the lab, we did an EP study, and it revealed an atrial flutter, which was easily induced with isoprenaline and sustained. So we got rid of the patient's flutter. So patient started to feel okay, like there were no episodes of presyncope thereafter. Now we continue to monitor the patient because we still wanted to know exactly as to whether what caused patient syncope. This was most likely the cause of patient's presyncopal episodes. So we continued to monitor, and in May 2019, we saw this. Does anyone want to say what does this single lead ECG recorded from the loop recorder shows?
Type 2.
Heart block.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it is a heart block. Type 2, I hear some like that. Now let us see where are the P waves and where are the QRS. Now you can see here that there is a P wave which is visible here. There is another P wave which is visible here, right? And the PP interval is about 1, 2, 3 boxes. So the heart rate of the sinus node, just the sinus rate, is just under 100 bits per minute. If you continue to track the P waves, you can see
Progressive prolongation of the P wave.
there is a prolongation of the PR interval. Sorry. Yeah, can you repeat your answer, doctor, please? I'm happy to take the suggestions if at all someone wants to say something about it, please.
Yeah,
I can see someone writing complete heart block, Venki back. All right. Progressive prolongation. I completely see that there are very variable answers to this rhythm strip. But let us see this way. Do you see any change in the interval between the QRS complexes? The QRS complexes are going at a fixed rate, very slow and fixed rate, which is not same as the rate of the P wave, and it is not changing with the P wave. So it means that there is no association between the P waves and the QRS complexes. So although here it looks like that the PR is short and the PR gets longer, there is a P wave which is just following the QRS, and there is a P wave which is buried in the QRS. So it means that these P waves are not driving the QRS complexes. And if they are not driving the QRS complexes and the atria and ventricles are going at their own rates, there has to be a loss of connection between them, which we call as complete heart block. Is that right?
Agreed.
Right. So what we expected as the cause of syncope did come onto the surface, but almost about 2 years later. And the patient finally got the pacemaker inserted. I will go to the next case. How does everyone find this meeting, the Zoom meeting? Is the communication and any suggestions into as
It's
to
great. Thank you.
Great. We are simultaneously
So just make the whole, fill up the whole screen.
as I am talking, we are also recording this session. So just please bear with me as they would like all the participants on video to be recorded as well.
There should be 31 people online. I don't know why we're not seeing that.
Because this only records those who are having their video on.
Oh.
All right.
If you don't, do you mind asking them if they don't mind being recorded? Can they turn the video on?
If you don't mind, I'm talking to the participants. If you don't mind, may I request you to turn your videos on if that is okay.
Just for one quick photo and then-
Thanks, Hamish.
Tell me.
Shelley.
There we go, it's getting great.
Shall we move on? Haley, is that okay?
Is that all right, guys? You got what you need? Yeah. Maybe ask them again. Is there anyone else who can turn the video on? Or, yeah, Matt's asking about their feedback. They're happy with the training?
Yeah, I think they are thinking that it is great. Anybody who wants to give any feedback about it, please? About the Zoom meeting, how do you find it? And any suggestions as to if it can be improved from your end? Although we are just into the start of it. We are seeing a thumb being raised by our GP.
You can put a background screen on your presentation. There's a button at the top there somewhere if you want. So you can have whatever screen you want to as a background. I don't know how to.
So I will minimize this video screen now, and we will move on with the next case. So thank you. Thank you for your patience. We'll move on to the next case. It's a 69-year-old female with hypertension who presented with heart racing 5 to 6 times in last 2 to 3 years. In November 2017, atrial fibrillation was captured on an ECG and apixaban was started. Event monitor thereafter revealed brief paroxysms of AF, and she was happy to take pills as required. So she was given pills only as pill in the pocket, as we call it, since that era when flecainide was tried. Flecainide, procainamide were tried for this. In August 2019, she was holding a knife in the kitchen and cutting the bread. She suddenly passed out, fell on her back and left shoulder. The knife ran through her neck and cut the facial artery. She was all in the pool of blood. Fortunately, carotids were safe. We inserted a loop recorder in her in October 2019. Now, you may ask me that this patient did not have more than one episode of syncope, but the gravity of the episode was such that we would not have wanted her to have another episode. She possibly had survived, and this was her, I would say, her second life. So we did not hesitate giving her a loop recorder. And in December 2019, we found this.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's no good.
What do you think is happening here, please?
Please.
Where is, we are certainly saying that there is a asystolic phase. Do you see the asystole as a result of AV block? Yes, that's true. Kenneth, I see you have mentioned atrial fibrillation. And this is an episode of atrial fibrillation here. There is this atrial fibrillation at the bottom of the strip, or is it sinus rhythm? It looks regular and we can see the sinus tiny P waves, right? So there is sinus rhythm at the bottom, there is atrial fibrillation on the top, and in between we are seeing sinus arrest. No, after atrial fibrillation stops, we should ideally see the sinus P wave coming, but sinus P wave has come after 1, 2, 3, 3.5 seconds, and another 1, 2, 3, 4.5, maybe almost quarter to 5 or 5 seconds. So there is significant amount of sinus node dysfunction in this patient. Now, what do you think is causing the sinus node dysfunction here? All right, let me ask you this question. Did we see any sinus pause during sinus rhythm? Or did we see any ventricular pause during atrial fibrillation? Or did we see a pause between atrial fibrillation and sinus rhythm, like after the termination of atrial fibrillation and before the beginning of sinus rhythm? So there are 3, and I think, what do you think is where the pause is? Within sinus rhythm, within atrial fibrillation, or between the 2? I am saying, doctor, I'm mentioning AV node. When you see an AV node as the level of block, you should always see P waves, but no QRS complex. Are we seeing any P waves in the pause?
No.
No, so this is not level of block. The level of block is not in the AV node. No P waves, exactly. I see you answering no P waves. What does it mean? The problem is in the SA node. The SA node generates the P waves. If SA node, yes, does not generate the P waves, how can the QRS complexes be formed? So unless you have P waves, you cannot say that AV node is a site of problem. The site of problem here is the sinus node. But is sinus node the primary reason why it is not generating P waves, or there was something else which was suppressing sinus node to generate the P waves? If sinus node was sick, you should see some pauses when the patient is in sinus rhythm here, which is at the bottom part of the screen. If AV node was a problem, you should see long RR intervals in atrial fibrillation, which is also not seen. So where is the problem? What we are seeing, does anyone want to say, or do you want me to answer, please?
Please.
All right.
Put us out of misery.
Yeah, what is actually happening here is that in atrial fibrillation, the atrium beats at about 400 to 500 beats per minute. So all those fibrillatory waves, they stimulate the sinus node 400 to 500 times in a minute. And the sinus node undergoes a state of suppression. Normally, it will beat at about 60 to 70 beats per minute at rest. And when it is asked to beat faster, it will go at 120, 130, 150, but not 400, 500 times a minute at rest. So it gets completely suppressed. And when suddenly that stimulus, 400, 500 beat stimulus from fibrillation stops, as it stopped here, sinus node took a little bit longer to wake up again and start its own function. It was asked to start its own function, but it was not ready for that. And most likely that was the cause of the patient fainting. with a knife in her hand.
Hmm.
So should we treat atrial fibrillation or should we treat sinus node dysfunction? What caused sinus node to become very slow?
AF.
AF. So it was just that the AF was bombarding sinus node so much at 400 times to 500 times a minute that it stopped working. So we just treated atrial fibrillation in this patient. And we started, what will you treat atrial fibrillation in this patient with? Will you give a beta blocker? Will you give calcium channel blocker? Will you give digoxin, or will you give an anti-arrhythmic drug like flecainide or amiodarone, or say even sotalol? Right, we will treat atrial fibrillation, and that's what we did here. We only started the patient on flecainide. We did not start patient on any AV node blocking agent or a rate slowing agent, because here fibrillation was the cause of sinus node dysfunction. So if we removed fibrillation, we should be able to let sinus node function normally. And until June 2020, patient has not had any single episode of fibrillation. So we could avoid pacemaker, but I think what will happen with time in this lady is that this episode, the previous one, was just an indication that sinus node is slowly, dysfunctionally dying, I would say. And as a result, with time, you are going to have this patient require a pacemaker. But at this stage, we are just observing her. Since she has got a loop recorder, any subsequent pause which is observed, say for example during sinus rhythm, will be appropriately captured and treated immediately with a pacemaker. But because the pause was not observed during sinus node and has not been observed during sinus rhythm so far, we are going to continue to watch her just on an antiarrhythmic drug. Well, any questions onto this, please? Do you need to comments on, I read that, on a NOAC? Absolutely, yes, yeah. I am talking about arrhythmias, but I don't mean to say that you should not be doing an anticoagulation. Obviously, she is on, I think, apixaban. Is this possibly, I mentioned that earlier. Let me see. Yeah, she is also on an apixaban twice a day in therapeutic dose. So yes, apixaban or NOAC should be commenced, absolutely. Is she allowed to drive while this is all going on? Usually once you capture the problem and you solve the problem, the patient can drive after 4 weeks. We have allowed the patient to drive because she is under continuous monitoring and we are seeing a good response. But we have not refused the pacemaker completely. We have told her that she may be requiring, but she may make use of her sinus node as long as it works. If patient presents with this due to this, do you control the rhythm same time with starting anticoagulant? Yes. This is a paroxysmal AF, as you could see. We will first, of course, put the patient on anticoagulant because that is a stroke prevention therapy, but it is not going to do anything to atrial fibrillation. So we simultaneously start both. Yes, it's a good question, which one to come first, but it depends on the type of atrial fibrillation you are dealing with. Maybe I will talk about it in my subsequent slides. I will move on to the next slide. This is about a 70-year-old male with high blood pressure, diabetes, obstructive sleep apnea. He spends a lot of time on the sea with his boat, and he told me that he could hold his breath for 1 minute underwater cleaning his boat. In June 2019, he presented with shortness of breath, and his complaint was that I could hold my breath only for 15 seconds underwater instead of 1 minute. What has happened to me? So the cardiologist who saw the patient did this ECG in July 2019. It was showing atrial fibrillation, which was at that time rate controlled with bisoprolol. The AF was first cited on an ECG in June 2018, about 1 year ago. On the further investigations were done by cardiologists. Echo showed normal LV function, mild dilatation of the left ventricle in atrial fibrillation. Coronary angiogram revealed triple vessel disease. So the patient underwent coronary artery bypass graft with left atrial appendage clip occlusion. In September 20,
Can't hear you, Ashok.
great. Can you hear me now? Great. So let me go back. So the patient underwent an echo which showed normal LV function. Angiogram showed triple vessel disease. Coronary artery bypass graft with left atrial appendage clip occlusion was done in September 2019. But after the bypass, there was no improvement in shortness of breath. ECG continued to show atrial fibrillation. So the cardiologist thought that it may be atrial fibrillation causing the problem. So he was electrically cardioverted in November 2019, and he felt great in sinus rhythm. That's what he told me. Only for 24 hours though. The AF recurred after 24 hours. So the cardiologist said, let us take an opinion of an electrophysiologist. And that's how he ends up with an electrophysiologist, which is myself here. I see him in January 2020, and I started him on an antiarrhythmic drug. I said, although your rate is very well controlled, it's not necessary that you will not have any symptoms from AF. AF produces symptoms due to heart failure, which may be secondary to rapid rates. It may not be secondary to rapid rates, but due to loss of atrial kick, although your rates may be very well controlled. So let us see if you feel better, hopefully for a longer period than 24 hours this time. And we started him on an antiarrhythmic drug. In March 2020, I cardioverted him. I did not cardiovert this patient immediately because his atrial fibrillation was 2 years long, sustained for 2 years, from June 2018 till almost this March 2020. So I said that this very long-standing atrial fibrillation is difficult to rhythm control if I don't give you an antiarrhythmic drug and wait for its effect to be enough to hold you there in rhythm. So he agreed, and we put him in sinus rhythm in March. He felt better for a few days in sinus rhythm, but the improvement was not sustained for more than a few weeks on an antiarrhythmic drug. So I got him back and I did an ECG, and his ECG showed this. Now I will show you both the ECGs, and one in January 2020 and one in March 20. Early March, I cardioverted him. End of March, he comes back. Still under the bot, 15 seconds. What's the cause? I want to be holding my breath for 1 minute. I said, all right, let's find out. And we did the ECG. What does this ECG show, and what different does this ECG show? Right, I see Dr. Yen answering that it is flutter. Most of them, you are telling it is flutter. And this is fibrillation. Are these two arrhythmias the same? For a doctor, for the patient, they are the same. They say, I don't feel any different. So yes, absolutely. For the patient, there is no change. But is it different for us? Do we treat them differently? Yes. For a cardiologist, possibly not a difference, but for an electrophysiologist, it is a very, very different arrhythmia. And that's the point of bringing up this case. As I said earlier, atrial fibrillation is like 400 to 500 impulses activating the atria every minute. What is the atrial rate in the flutter. What do you see is the atrial rate? If you count these P waves, as you know, this is a 10-second recording. If you count the P waves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. Let's take it 50 in 10 seconds, which will come to 300 in 60 seconds. So the atrium is activated 300 times in a minute. It was activated 4 to 500. Consider it 500 with such a fine fibrillation as you can see here. It was 500 to 300, which is a significant breakthrough and a very, very good response to an antiarrhythmic drug. Although for the patient, no difference. But for me, it is a very, very big difference that I have tamed a very long-standing fibrillation to come down from 500 to 300 beats a minute, which is much easier to fix. And this is how we fix it here. This is showing the intracardiac electrograms, and you are seeing this is the activation of the atrium. The distance between this and this spike is 200 milliseconds, which means 300 beats per minute. And you can see here as I'm cauterizing this flutter circuit, flutter or tachycardia is a single short circuit in the heart, just one. And it is very, very easy to break compared to atrial fibrillation, which is about several short circuits, maybe as many as the number of times the atria beat. So if I have to treat one short circuit versus 400 short circuits, I would be very comfortable treating one instead of 400. So that's why I put the patient on the table. And as you can see here, the flutter waves here stop as I break the circuit. And this is with cauterization, with ablation, patient restores sinus rhythm. This has happened, as you can see here, just in April. And I could sense the patient as I was taking the femoral vein access. I asked the patient, can you hold your breath? And he could very easily hold the breath for 40 seconds. Now, this was in flutter, so I was possibly very much happy to see that the patient who was in fibrillation, not able to hold breath, in flutter had improved. And I am expecting further improvement in his breath holding capacity and level of physical activity with time as he remains in sinus rhythm. So this is not an extensive ablation. This is just an ablation, which is a spot ablation, and you can restore sinus rhythm. Any questions on that case, please? All right, I will move on. This is an interesting 20-year-old female who is on treatment for allergic bronchitis. No palpitations. She doesn't have any complaints. The GP notes fast heart rate and does an ECG, and the ECG looks like this. She is asymptomatic. She is more worried about her cough, not worried about the heart. What do you think does the heart show, like the rhythm show? I see Ken answering SVT, you SVT, Jonathan SVT. Sorry, I will move back on. Sinus tachycardia from Zar, SVT. Very nice. Nobody is saying it is VT, so I agree with you that it is not a VT. It has to be either an SVT or possibly sinus tachycardia. Why not sinus tachycardia? Does anyone want to volunteer as to where are the P waves here, whether it is, and what is the heart rate? The heart rate is about, anybody? All right, I will move on and I will, yeah, heart rate is more than 150, about I would say it is about 170 or 165 beats per minute. And what you see here is this sharp, relatively P wave looking complex. Is it a T wave or a P wave? What do you think is this wave, T or P? All right, everyone says P wave. Let us confirm if it is right or not. You can see if it is a T wave, where else do you see T wave very clearly? You can see T wave very clearly in lead V2. So this is a T wave, and if this is a T wave, the wave which follows the T wave in lead V1, as you can see here, is conspicuously separate from the T. So it is a P wave, and the PR is short. Is the P wave upright in inferior leads? It is upright in inferior leads, which proves that this has to be coming from the atrium. No SVT. Like when I say SVT, I mean AV node reentry or accessory pathway like a WPW will have positive P waves in inferior leads. Positive P waves means we are dealing with an atrial arrhythmia or sinus tachycardia. Great. So this patient may have atrial tachycardia or sinus tachycardia because the P waves are looking like sinus P waves. So the likely arrhythmia, as you have rightly said, is an SVT, which I think is an atrial tach or sinus tach. How will you manage this? What next will you do here? Patient is not symptomatic. So we will certainly first do an echo. What do you think will the echo show? Great, carotid massage, yes, carotid massage will likely slow down, but it did not slow down the tachycardia. It did not do anything to this rate. All right, I will tell you, I don't want to hold you more on this. This is a patient whose echo showed pericardial effusion, small pericardial effusion. And can you now, going back after having known that she has pericardial effusion, tell me that this is an ECG of pericarditis, you think? Does anyone think that this could be pericarditis? Can we give a beta blocker? Yes, we gave patient, like I think that what we found here is that the ST segments and T waves are almost flat in most of the leads. Patient has got sinus tachycardia, which is not responding well to carotid massage. Yes, beta blocker will certainly help. It will slow the heart rate down. Pericarditis has a looping up after P, doesn't it? I see that Saddleback is not apparent. Yes, now what I would say everyone here is that this is not an acute pericarditis. This patient has got subacute pericarditis. In acute pericarditis, you will see patients with ST elevation and tall T waves. But if you allow that pericarditis to stay there for some time, it will cause STT flattening. And if you don't see in a 20-year-old female with usually not a diseased heart, not very good QR, not very good STT segments like ST and T waves, you should suspect something more in the pericardium, and especially with tachycardia, most likely pericarditis. So young patients without conspicuous STT and resting tachycardia, not symptomatic from tachycardia, most likely you are dealing with something not in the heart, but in the pericardium. Yes, can it be atrial tachycardia? It can be atrial tachycardia driven by pericarditis, but in this case, treatment involved only the treatment of pericarditis, and it settled down with time. Although we did add a beta blocker because we did not want the left ventricle or the right ventricle to fail. So this was just an odd case in between the arrhythmias, just to tell you that we need to keep other options open always when we see arrhythmia. It need not that always it's an arrhythmia which is the cause of the patient's problem. And here patient was not symptomatic from this. We will go to the next case, which is of a 50-year-old non-diabetic, non-hypertensive marathon runner. She runs 50 to 100 kilometers regularly. In February 2019, she went to run first ultra marathon, 355 kilometers, and collapsed after 320 kilometers on day 4. She thought it was due to inadequate eating and drinking. In July 2019, she complained of chest pressure. August 2019, she underwent an echo which showed query atrial fibrillation. In November 2019, Holter revealed atrial ectopics and short atrial runs. December 2019, CT-CA revealed normal coronaries and thyroid function was normal. In February 2020, she re-ran ultramarathon because her coronaries were normal. She ran 355 kilometers and completed it in 99 hours with 12 hours of rest in between. She decided to take an opinion of a cardiologist specializing in heart's conduction system. And she came in with this ECG. Does anyone want to volunteer as to what does it show, please? All right. Sinus bradycardia, I see. OPME, you are saying that is true. Let us see, what does the P wave look like? Is the P wave looking like normal P wave? 6 sinus, okay, 6 sinus, all right. Sinus node here. If there is a 6 sinus, the next pacemaker should second degree Mobitz type 2. Now Mobitz type 2 is it at the level of sinus and like a sinus node and atrium junction, or is it between the atrium and the ventricle? The junction between atrium and ventricle, or sinus node and atrium? Because Mobitz type 2 can be at different levels. Anyway, true, the patient has got P wave morphology which is changing, as you can see here. This P wave looks like a normal sinus P wave. This P wave looks a little bit different and comes after a long pause. This P wave is almost flat in the inferior lead. Then this P wave again looks like this one. There is another here, almost no P wave, but if you see there is a suggestion of a P wave here, and it is with a very short PR interval, which means it may not be a P wave which is generated by the sinus node. Same type of P wave here, another P wave which is looking like this P wave here. So what is this state called? Absolutely, you are right. It's called a wandering pacemaker. And this lady who is having a very fit heart has produced himself under the vagal influence significant amount of sinus node remodeling, that her sinus node is not a single spot, but it is a very stretched out structure, almost occupying the entire right atrium from the SVC to the IVC. So the pacemaker, this entire sinus node, stretched out sinus node, if it paces from the top end of it, it will have a P wave like this. If it is pacing from the bottom end of it, it will look like a P wave which is flat, right? So this is a situation where you get it. Often we call this as an atrial pacemaker, but it is usually a very stretched out structure in the right atrium, which beats heart fast from its top part and slow from its bottom part. So yes, this is no arrhythmia. There is no atrial arrhythmia here. This may be a PAC, I agree, but this is a case of a normal conduction system of an athlete. No abnormalities here other than a PAC, no atrial fibrillation, just a wandering pacemaker. So I advise that you just need periodic monitoring of cardiac conduction system. You are already 55 years old. Your heart has significant amount of remodeling from exercise. It is more prone to atrial arrhythmias, but we will treat it as it comes. At this stage, you don't need anything other than just your periodic ECG monitoring. What is the treatment? Yes, the treatment is OPME, just to continue to watch at this stage, not to stop running, because stop running is going to produce some more mental problems. When the heart is not significantly damaged, I would not advise at this stage that it is going to make any change in her cardiac conduction system, which has remodeled over several years, maybe decades, and therefore imposing restrictions in physical activity is not going to help her. Plus, the aging effects will set in, they will produce their own problems. And she may have atrial fibrillation, which is okay. We will treat it as it comes. If she had atrial fibrillation at 35 years of age, or if she was say 30 years of age, I would have advised differently, but at this stage, just periodic monitoring is enough. Any red flags that need to be watched for? I think, as I said, what I will do is, if at all she is symptomatic, which I don't think she would be, I would subject her to periodic, maybe as required, an event monitor or a halter, but I don't think she is going to deteriorate very rapidly. Remember, atrial arrhythmia, atrial disease is a age-related, slowly progressive problem. It's not a rapidly progressive problem. So I would, at this stage, not worry. And plus, you can see the AV node is so robust. You saw that, right? The PR interval, such a great PR interval here, 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 wherever. You don't see any blocked P waves. So she is unlikely to have AV node dysfunction, and I will not be able to prevent her atrial remodeling, even if I ask her to stop running, because she, as you saw, is already a 50-year-old female. And she is going to age, and age is going to produce its own effect. So whatever you are seeing right now is normal, not due to running, like no damage due to running, just her normal remodeling process of an athlete's heart conduction system. What is the prolonged PR interval in some parts? Where do you see prolonged PR interval, Ken? I don't see any prolonged PR interval here. Right, you may want to know, why is this PR very short, right? Now remember, sinus node, as I said, is a long structure. It's not just a spot in the top part of the heart. That long structure may extend all the way, sometimes close to the AV node, AV junction. And when that lower part of the sinus node is starting the impulse, it will enter into AV node very, very quickly, because it's generated from the spot which is very close to the AV node. And that's why the PR may become very short. So short PR suggests that conduction time between the onset of the P wave and into the AV node was short, which means the P wave must have been generated very close to the AV node. Yes, if it was inverted, I would have said that it is a junctional beat which has been conducted simultaneously to A and V, but here it looks more an upright P wave. So I think it is from the lower part and more flattish in lead 2. So mostly from the lower part of the sinus node. Why the prolonged RR interval in some parts in RR interval? That's true. That is because of a very high vagal tone that this patients have. Remember, top part of the sinus node is where there is a very high sympathetic innervation, like all sympathetic fibers, they are highly concentrated in the top part of the sinus node, whereas the amount of sympathetic innervation as you continue to go down the sinus node will reduce, which means that the lower part of the sinus node is going to be under influence of higher vagal tone. And that's why when you have a P wave which is more up, like a tall P wave, the rate would be faster. When the P wave is flattish, the RR interval will be long. As you can see here, this RR interval is long, RR interval is long. RR becomes shorter compared to the previous RR when the P wave is more tall. This is a PAC according to me. Again, P wave becomes flat, and that's why RR is short, because it suggests high vagal influence. I will go on to the next slide, which is again of a 48-year-old marathon runner. She is having a history of supraventricular tachycardia 20 years ago in South Africa. No details available. She told me that She was cardioverted. I don't have any details to verify if she is right or not. She presented with syncope and palpitations from a new onset atrial fibrillation, very rapidly conducted. AF responded very well to flecainide. She was feeling after 8 months. So 8 months went very well, no problems. She started to feel tired and very short of breath intermittently, despite being in sinus rhythm on flecainide. So I gave her a home recording instrument called AliveCore, which possibly many of you would know. You can record your own ECG at home. You get some 2 dots sent in by mail, and you download an app on your phone, and you can start recording ECG on your own phone. So she started to record that for me to see as to what is causing her symptoms. And the culprit was as under. And this is a single lead ECG recording from that AliveCore device. And what do you think is seen here? Does anyone want to say, or should I carry on in the best interest of time? AF, I can see someone writing AF. Yes, true. In single lead ECG recording, remember the patient is very nervous. She is a marathon runner and she is very nervous that she may be getting something wrong on the ECG. So at my insistence, she has bought that instrument and now she is recording. She is possibly a bit concerned as to what is happening, and that's why you are seeing a baseline noise. However, if you check the interval from this to this QRS to this QRS, and then to this QRS, it is uniform. Then there is a short interval, and you will see another beat here, then a long interval, and then again the regularity is maintained until this extra beat comes in. So every 4th beat you are seeing an extra beat like this. Sorry. One here, one here, one here. You see possibly nothing here until one here and another one here. So now these patients who have got atrial fibrillation on flecainide, they have started to develop this extra beats. What do you think? Are they PVCs or they are PSEs? Frequent high VPBs, that's true. I think they are PVCs, but they are very relatively narrow complex. Let us look at that PVC on a 12 lead, because I put her on a 12 lead ECG to see what exactly is this beat looking like. And see here, a 12 lead ECG. I am showing you a sinus rhythm here. You can see this sinus rhythm. There are 2 complexes in this ECG. The first one is the sinus QRS, and the second one is that extra beat. If you look at it, it is very narrow complex, right? But the QRS morphology is different than the sinus beat. The QRS in sinus rhythm looks like this. This looks a little bit wideish. Is taller in lead 2, little bit less taller in lead 3, and remains narrow complex all throughout. So where do you think, say, this has no preceding P wave. As you can see, it is a little bit wide complex. Where do you think is this PVC arising from? So she was doing very well on flecainide for fibrillation and she was feeling great, and suddenly she has new problem, which is a PVC, and she doesn't like any extra beats, not even atrial, not even ventricles. Yeah, just below AV node. Where? All right, I will, high ventricular, just below AV node. I will tell you, if at all you see any narrow complex PVC like this, which resembles the sinus QRS, remember that it is arising from the septum. Like, and in the high in the septum, which is near the His bundle, because His bundle is the penetrating part of the atrioventricular junction, which allows the impulse to go to the ventricle. So that top part of the His bundle and the myocardium, ventricular myocardium surrounding the His bundle, is where this is coming from. So you're right, high ventricular septum, that's where the His bundle lies. So this is parahesian. Now let us see what happens in the His bundle in this lady. And I put the catheter on the His bundle. So I did a diagnostic EP study to study this, because she is quite symptomatic on the antiarrhythmic drug. She is not on no antiarrhythmic drug. She is on flecainide and doing well, and suddenly this happens. What do you see here? Now, these are all intracardiac recordings. I will just familiarize you with them. Now, this stretch is the recording from the His bundle. My catheter is lying on the His bundle. And you can see here this sharp wave, which is the local myocardium from the ventricles. There is a tiny wave here, which is the local myocardium of the atrium near the His bundle. And this is the His bundle activity. This tiny wave is showing the His bundle activity. So what I was interested in was to see how long did it take for the impulse to travel from His bundle to the ventricle, because His bundle's job is to carry the impulse to the ventricle, and it's very important. And what I saw was that the distance between them, you cannot see here, it is 70 milliseconds. So look here. So this tiny wave, as you saw here, is from the atrium near His bundle, as you can see here. This deflection is the His bundle activity. And this is the ventricle, which is just near here. So think about an impulse which is traveling from here to here, and from the His bundle to the ventricle, it is taking 70 milliseconds. What is the normal time that you and me will record if we were to have a normal conduction? 30 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds, maximum 50 milliseconds or 55. It will not go down to 70 milliseconds, which means this lady who is a marathon runner has history of atrial fibrillation, and now the PVC arising from the same area has the normal His ventricle conduction time increased to 1.5 times, which means there is an area of slow conduction, and therefore a local circuit is formed, because when the conduction slows down on one path, it will always have an alternative path to go. And if those two paths, they start circuiting, they start sorting, they will produce an ectopy or an arrhythmia. So the problem is lying in the patient's His bundle conduction system, and that is what is responsible for this para-Hisian PVC. How will you treat this? What happens if you try and cauterize it here where it is arising from? You will induce? What will you induce? If you try to get rid of the problem here on the His bundle, you will induce complete heart block. That's right, you. So very, very important. In a 48-year-old who wants to continue to run marathons, you have to tell her that no, this is not going to work well for her. She has already got atrial fibrillation, which has been so fast, so robust that it had made her pass out. Now her His bundle, which is much more critical, His and ventricle, when the disease starts to get into the ventricles, that's when I will say you better stop. It is damaging you. Until then, you are having a stretched physiological response from your heart's conduction system. Now this is going beyond physiology of an athlete. This is going into the pathology. So better you stop running. So yes, I asked her to not continue to run marathons, but to continue to run in a way, not the marathons, but in a way that keeps her happy and pleasant in her day-to-day life, but not do it for the sake of challenging herself whether she can do or not. Otherwise, at this stage, I have left her off any medications, and I will see if at all it progresses, and if I need to ablate, I will first put a pacemaker in her, because there is a significant disease in that conduction system area. Quickly, we'll go to today's learning points. I think I have already highlighted them. Loop recorder implantation, I don't want to tell you more, but you saw 2 patients with syncope. So syncope, where you don't know a cause on your routine tests like ECG, Holter, and event monitor, you can refer a patient for implantable loop recorder implantation. The second indication, which is not a part of the talk today, is embolic stroke, where atrial arrhythmia is suspected but never captured, and you want to put a patient on anticoagulant. Then you may put a loop recorder, and if you find atrial fibrillation, that will most likely be a cause of embolic stroke. Loop recorders, we have just got an approval at Peel Hospital, so I'm just sharing this slide with you. that we have implanted our first loop recorder on 30th of June, and it can be implanted as well as explanted now at Peel Hospital. But at this stage, it's not for all the patients, but only those with private health insurance in Peel. But we are trying to see if the government will give us the contract to extend it to public patients. Atrial arrhythmias, I don't want to say more because I already told about it. The few points are that atrial fibrillation is a progressive disease. It begins as a localized problem. Because AF begets AF, longer you leave the patient in AF, more widespread that localized disease will become. So among the two clinical varieties which you commonly know, paroxysmal AF and persistent AF, remember paroxysmal is a localized problem, persistent is a widespread problem. If a rhythm-controlled atrial fibrillation patient presents with atrial tachycardia or flutter, like in that case, it is not a sign of disease progression. It's not a sign of failure of antiarrhythmic drugs. It's a sign of favorable response to treatment, which can be more easily fixed than fibrillation. Athlete's heart, what is normal and expected? As I said, high vagal tone and related SA and AV nodal bradyarrhythmias, which you saw, but premature PACs and ventricular beats in absence of structural electrical heart disease, mind well, electrical heart disease is okay. What is not normal is advanced AV block or infranodal conduction delay, as we just saw. HV very long. HV is the time between his and ventricle, so I call it HV. Atrial fibrillation, flutter, tachycardia, supraventricular, ventricular tachycardia, and advanced AV block, which means more than Wenckebach, is not normal part of athlete's cardiac conduction system. Thank you very much for your patience.
So I'd just like to thank Dr. Shah. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions that haven't been answered at all? And while we're doing it, Dr. Shah, do you want to just share your screen and I'll share mine, because I just wanted to show everyone something. That's all right, I can do it.
I am stopping now.
Yep. So just there is evaluation, and I will just put up a little bit about Dr. Shah, and I'll put that back. There's your QR code. If you want to hold your phone over that, you'll get the SurveyMonkey. If not, I'll send it all out tomorrow in an email to everyone. So has anyone got any questions at all? Just unmute yourselves. Well, seems like we're losing a few people. Well, I think that's about it then. I think everyone seems to be signing off. So thank you very much, Dr. Shah. And we've done a recording of this tonight, so I'll put that back up onto our website, and then anyone can just register in and view that.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And thank you very much, Cheryl, for conducting it well.
All right. Cheers. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.